Hi, everybody. As most of you probably know by now, I'm BJ. I'm the genealogy librarian at the Maine State Library. And today I'm going to talk about using one of the websites slash apps that you can use to track your personal library. And I'm most familiar with Library Thing because that's what I've personally used. I've also used Goodreads to some extent, but I'm going to talk mostly about Library Thing. I will admit that decision was made easier. Library Thing is based here in Maine, and so I feel like I should be, doing the one that's local. And the idea is with these that you can keep track of the books you own. You can keep track of what you've read and things like that. And I appreciate it because I read some mystery series where all of the titles in the series are puns. And sometimes it's hard to remember whether I've read that one or not. One of the romance authors I read from, I don't pay for television. So one of the romance authors I read has a series that it's 6 books that are all slightly this, slightly that. And again, remembering which ones. One reason I like Goodreads is it really lets you, Library Thing is it lets you tag books by tags that make sense to you. So for example, if I have a cookbook about food in Scotland, I can label it both Scotland and cookbook. And so when I go to look at my books about Scotland, it comes up. And when I go to look about my books about cooking, it comes up. And so, one of the downsides of some of the standard library classifications by subject is you need to choose one place to put something. Whereas with Library Thing, you can choose multiple tags. And so if I have a book that is set in Ireland that's a mystery, I can put it under both of those. I could add, if the amateur detective is female, I can add female detective if I want. I can add location. I have books in my apartment and I have books here up to camp. And so I can add which place I have a book if I want to. If I discard something, I can put discard in so that I know that I owned it at one time and decided to get rid of it for some reason. If I loan it to somebody, I can put in who I've loaned it to. So it's a really handy thing. So let me share my screen. And I'm mostly going to talk about Library Thing, and then I'll show you Goodreads to show you how it's a little different. So let me share my screen. And so when you log into Library Thing, this is the home page. I will tell you for a long time, and I signed up back when this was new, which is more than a decade ago. You paid the whopping fee. You could enter 200 books for free, and you paid the whopping fee of $10 a year or $25 for a lifetime membership. And those numbers had stayed the same. And so, needless to say, I paid the $25 for a lifetime membership, which means you can enter as many books as you want. And those prices had stayed the same until March of this year, when they went to having free lifetime memberships for everybody. The reason they're able to do that without a lot of ads is they also have some software they sell to small libraries. So some of the small libraries in rural parts of the US use their version of cataloging instead of one of the fancier, expensive ones that places like the State Library use. So they're able to offer this for free for the rest of, for individual users because of that. So that's really nice that if you decide you want to join this, it's free for you now. And guys know me, I like free. Who doesn't, right? So anyhow, you can see I haven't been adding much all that much lately. I had hoped to have time during the lockdown to do it, and I didn't. So here you have the books I've recently added. It tells you how many books I have in. That is not the total of my books. My library is larger than that, scarily. I've used 438 different tags on things. I have books by 1,723 different authors. And I have books from almost 400 different series. That's real easy to get to when you do mysteries, the series. I haven't worked, collections is something they added about 5 years ago, so I haven't really done much with collections, but you can, for example, you can have a wish list of things that you don't own but you want to get. I also have read but I don't own, which are things that I've put in because I've had them from the library and I want to remember that I read them. And then you can see some of the tags here that I've used. So I have Judaica and I have mystery. I have language, which I actually separate out from linguistics. And I have books about the English language, which may or may not be linguistics books. For example, with my Star Trek books, because geek, you probably already figured that, right? So I have things that are, everything Star Trek gets that tag of just Star Trek, but then books about the original series are tagged that way. Here's the Next Generation tagged that way, but they're all tagged Star Trek. I have books tagged Colonial New England because of my interest in Colonial New England. So down here, these are recommendations based on what I have of books I might want to look at. And like this one, I can go and I've actually read this one. And I actually own it. So if I open that one up, and my internet's been cranky since last week, so I apologize for I say, okay, I've got this one. So I can just hit add to my books here. And I put in mystery. And I've also got all of my books by Catherine Aird tagged Aird. And I hit search. Oh, sorry, I need to pull it up over here. And there I have it with those tags, and it's now in my books. And so if we go back to the home page and reload it, there it is, added today. So I find a lot of time, it's not at all unusual. I could add this, I can add the Donna Wells or Donna Andrews Julia Spencer Fleming, if you're looking for interesting, really well done mysteries with interesting people, Julia Spencer Fleming's a main author, and she really does a good job. So I always look at this because there tend to be books down here that I've read. So the other things you can do, they actually get copies of books from various publishers to be early reviewer books. So if you join, you can go look, and if one interests you, you can put you don't always get it, but you can put a request in. And then the more you review, the more likely you are to get future books. But if you're someone who likes reading a book to review, it's a good thing. You can have a profile page, and you can see how early on I added a lot of books. And this doesn't go back as far as, I think if we do 15 years, that'll cut. Yeah, they started in 2006. And so you can see how I was pretty good for a while, and then I added a bunch at once, and then I've kind of slacked off. But you can add somebody as a friend or mark it as an interesting library. So, these are friends of mine. These look at who has similar books to the ones I do. And so this can be rather dangerous because, when you have somebody who has a fair number of the same books, if I go look at their profile, and you do not need, one thing I should make clear, you do not need to make your profile public. You can have a private profile if you don't want, or you can choose a name that has no relation to your name, and so people can't connect it to you. This one, it looks like somebody used their like initials and last name, but if you look at some of these, you can see, this is probably somebody who's a fan of the Dallas Mavericks. So, unidentifiable is a way to have a public library without revealing who you are. You can have favorite libraries. And so as you can see, I've got bunches of them. Because I'm rather a library geek, which I'm sure is a huge surprise to all of you, that I've been to lots of libraries and love lots of them. You can do the same thing with bookstores. And so, for example, here's the Bull Moose in Scarborough, which for those of you in Maine is the one out by the Maine Mall. And obviously at this point, they're not having events, but when they have events, they will list them, and you can, and that's one reason to favorite a bookstore or a library, is it's a way to pull into their news and specials and so on. And so that's one of the things you can do. You see, I have some favorite authors in terms of, I will often get a notice that there's a new book out by one of them. So let's go back. You can also, under books, there's the early reviewers, there's the ones that people are added. These are the most commonly added books in the last month, which may or may not be the same as the bestseller list. If people have tagged things that they're reading them right now, so this is the ones people have added to their libraries, this is what they're reading, and these are the top ones added to a wish list. And there's some overlap, but for example, looks like a lot of people are reading Harry Potter, which is not too surprising for a summer read. Some Tolkien, some Game of Thrones, whereas the being added to the library and wish listed tends to have other selections. The community, there are groups that have message boards. So here is the Asian fiction and nonfiction, which is dormant at the moment. I think if it goes, it's either a year or two without any messages, it goes dormant. But let's go, here's one, British and Irish crime fiction. So you get discussions, and from what I can tell, these are less active than they were 5 to 10 years ago, as things have moved to Twitter and Facebook. But some of them are still active, and some of them have rather funny names, like this is about Canadian literature. And again, it's dormant. But you can go under active and look and see what there are. So, Needle Arts, I think I'm a member of. Yeah. But what this will do, let's say I'm looking for a particular knitting book and I can sort of half remember it. If I type something in here, it's searching not all of the whole site, but just the libraries of the people who belong to Needle Arts. And so it's more likely to hit on what I'm looking for than if it searches the whole site. There are local groups. As you can see, here's Maine Library Association's group, which I actually don't think I'm a part of, which I should be since I'm on the board. I may have to actually revive this. You can explore by tags. And so let's say you're interested in Canadian literature. Here's the group tags on that. There is, the talk page is about, has all sorts of things here. You can see these are the, our various book talks groups. The zeitgeist is things like, and I will tell you, I used to be on this list before this website got so big, of the 50 largest libraries, and I've fallen way off that. As you now have people with tens of thousands of books. And I don't think even if I got all of mine in here, I don't think I hit 10,000. But you have, just for fun, the authors that have tended to be highly rated, the ones who get low ratings, the 25 books with the highest ratings. The shorter Oxford Dictionary on Historical Principles, not surprising, is high. But you have the complete Calvin and Hobbes is third after the shorter OED. And the Fiber and Fleece source book, definitely, as a knitter, I can tell you that should be there. Lots of interesting things there. So that's just kind of it's the fun page. So let's go back to my books. And here you can see, these are the books I've added. And here, let me bump this up a little in size. We'll get less on the page, but you'll be able to see it better. So for example, when I added the book, The Pilgrim Migration, I gave it the tags of colonial New England, Plymouth, and Mayflower. So if I want to find all of the books I have about Plymouth, I can open that tag up. And as you can see, I have 9 books that I've tagged Plymouth. Whereas if I do colonial New England, I have 74, and this also includes books about Salem, books about the general American colonies. Here, this is another good book, American Jezebel, The Uncommon Life of Anne Hutchinson. If you're interested in female biographies of interesting women, that's one is worth reading. Here's one about some of the religious groups that were quite radical and generally didn't survive. Murdered by His Wife was another really good one. So this is really helpful if I want to, it's like, I know I have a book on this topic, but I can't remember the name. I can just scroll through if I've tagged things well. You can also look by author. So for example, I've tagged these as aired, but if I want to go by this, it goes to her page. And brings that up. But it also looks at what other people have. These are people have entered the names of characters. You can do that. And she sets her mysteries in a fake place in England. So those are tagged. If you're looking for things where she was a contributor but wasn't the full author, those come up as well. And so these are links to places about her, and so on. So let's go through the process of adding a book. And as you can see, when we go to the Add Books tab, it gives us the choice of, we can search by title, author, ISBN, the Library of Congress card number, and then there are different places we can search. And I'm going to search the Library of Congress for this one. And you can't see it, but I have a complete Sherlock Holmes in my hands. It's a 1-volume set put out by Barnes & Noble. And I'm going to add the ISBN here, which is 088029261X. Now, the reason I did this by ISBN is this is a book that has a lot of editions. And by doing this, it will pull up, supposedly. Okay, so now we'll take a look at Amazon. There we go. And if I click here, it adds it. And if I click on Quick Edit, I can put mystery. And I can't remember whether I tagged Sherlock. I must not have. And it's now in my library. So if I go back to our homepage, the homepage, there it is. So let me show you another one. Let's choose this. I have one here that's my favorite Scottish genealogy book by Bruce Dury. So if I go back to add a book, I'm going to search by him. Oops. And hit search. And you'll see that there are multiple copies of this. So I need to look, and I have the 2012. And then I want to look at my barcode. And it is this one. And again, I can do the quick edit and I can add Scotland and genealogy. And genealogy Scotland if I want to be. So that's really a lot of what it is. Now, some books are old enough, like I have one here that's a town history that's old enough that it doesn't have any sort of ISBN number. It's early enough, it's from the 1850s. And so I want to put in history of Norway and hit search. And these are all coming up as from Amazon of books about the country. So what I can do is, let's switch to the New England, because it's a town here in Maine, let's switch to the New England Library Consortium and search again and see what I get. And while we're waiting, does anybody have any questions? Okay, this is taking.
BJ, I have a question while we're waiting. It's Diane.
Sure.
I was just finishing doing all my library. I've actually I'm terrible for a library. I say this to a librarian, but I've just coded my bookcase. It's very large, color coded. So it's hard to even find a book unless you know the color. But I'm taking a picture of it and then leaving a list behind. But if I just entered the books, if I wanted to join this and just entered the books, I just have to write the name, right? I already have the book. So are you going to go through, if you already have it and you just want to make a list of books that you have?
Yeah, that's what, you would just add the books that way.
Okay.
And you can import, I think it's under more. If you have things in a spreadsheet here, you can import here.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that. I'm just going to begin to make a list of it. So can you just make a list? Say Amazon sells it, click it. Can you get it into an already read book list?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
and that's one of the things, like that's one reason this is fairly easy, is if you put in, let me see if I can find this book by the author name. Try the Library of Congress. You can add one manually as well. So like this one's not coming up, probably because it's old enough, and you'll see here at the bottom, you've got the import books or add manually. And so this book that didn't come up because it was written in 1852, even though I've got a modern reprint or semi-modern reprint, I could enter this manually. And one reason I don't have some of my books in is I have 3 or 4 boxes, about 3 bookcases worth of books that are pre-1900, and I'm probably going to have to enter most of them manually. But if it's a modern book, it should come up, because you can search the Library of Congress. I was really happy when they added the Israel Union list, because a lot of my Judaica books came up that way. New York Public Library, British Library. Some of my Scottish books now come up because they've added the University of Edinburgh and the National Library of Scotland. And so you can choose which of these you search. But Amazon US or Amazon.com, it's going to have a lot of them. And so you would just put in the title or the ISBN number here. And so let me do one more for you to see. So I have one here called Tracing Your Ancestors Using DNA. And this is a British book, so I'm actually going to choose Amazon UK to search. And as you can see, it brings up several other things, but it is this top one I want. And so to add it to my collection, all I need to do is click on it, and there it is. And show quick edit, and then I put in genealogy and DNA and save the tags. Now you can go in and change, sorry, I hit the wrong thing here. If you want to edit it, because for example, you want to put signed by the author or something, you can go in and change this as well as adding your review. If you have more than one copy of something, because like I have one book where I bought it in hardcover and I really liked it. I went to the author talk and decided to buy the paperback that they were selling in order to get it autographed and have a chance to speak to the author. And then, so I've kept both copies because I have one here at the cottage and one over at the apartment. So on some books, you might want to put, you've got 2 copies. So it's, one reason I like this is it's fairly easy to add books, as you can see. And as I said, if you've already kept stuff in a spreadsheet, you can import it. And you'll see there's this library extension I've added that works both here and at Amazon. This is a Chrome extension that looks at my local libraries. And actually, I know the state library has it, but our catalog, because of being closed, is semi-shut down. And so it's not picking that up. So that's sort of the summary of what you get with this. But I like that they have, I've got a visual memory, so having the little thumbnail of the books really helps me remember what it is. And yeah, if you've organized your books by color, you could tag them as you put it in by the cover. You could add blue or green or whatever. Or, if you have some things in your home office versus in, not, that are sort of your office books, you could tag office Um, you know, when I've had books of mine in my office at wherever I was working, I will tag them as a work office so that I know where they are if I can't find it. It's less of an issue now that I work in a library, but when I was working as an editor, a lot of my books on English language were books I had, they're editing and style guides. And so I had those at work and wanted to make sure I knew where they were. Because there's nothing more frustrating than looking for, to me, there are very few things more frustrating than looking for a book and not being able to find it. And one reason my use of this has tapered off is this stopping adding books pretty much tapers off when I started working in libraries, and I'm just not buying that many books because I work in a library. And so let's take a minute, now that I've gone fairly long. This is Goodreads. Goodreads is now owned by Amazon. They didn't used to be. It has similar functions. So you have my books, and you can see it's similar. You don't have quite the tagging capability, which is what, for me, gives Library Thing the edge. That's really the big difference for me, is I like being able to put those tags in. I find Goodreads slightly easier to use for I've read it versus I want to read it. So if you use this a lot as things you want to, if you want to keep a list of books you want to read, Goodreads is probably slightly better for that. And that's what this has tended to be for me, more than a place to be the books that I've read already. It's much more of, these are the books I'm looking to read at some point. They do have some interesting tools. One of the things they do is every year there's a challenge. I need to enter, I have obviously read more than one book this year. I need to enter a bunch of these because I had set myself a goal of one book a day, which I'm almost at. I should have read 220, and I think I'm up to about 190, which, given how crazy this year's been, is kind of funny. Like this one right here, I actually have been want to read, and I have just finished reading, and I can change it to read. I have it out of the library. Actually, it was yesterday I finished it. So I tend to do this and most of the stuff in here, when I look at my list, is stuff that I'm not going to buy. And so I have, to a great extent, if I own it, it goes into Library Thing. If I don't own it, it goes into Goodreads, which is also free. You can see they've got ads as a way of supporting it, as opposed to Library Things, which will have ads if you're not signed in, but once you've signed in as a member, you won't have ads. So on both of them, the best way to learn to use them is to poke around. It's like with anything, it's to poke around. Um, so can you guys see the utility of something like this? You know, it's a big investment to get started if you want to put all of your books in. But if you're better than I am at maintaining, it's not hard to maintain. It's just that I've been, you know, maintaining library collections rather than my own personal. So any questions at this point? You know, and there are some others. These are the two big ones. And in terms of getting recommendations, having the big databases is helpful. Yeah, Cheryl. Yeah.
I have one quick question. I know these are websites, but do you have any book apps that you can use on your phone? Which might be
They both have apps.
Oh, they both. Okay, great. Good.
Yeah. They both have apps that are tied into the website.
Okay, thanks.
There may be standalone apps, but I haven't looked into those.
Okay.
Partly because I find that for the most part, the data entry is easier on the computer.
If you're going to enter the name of a book, does it ever fill it in? Like if you fill in so much of the name, it will complete it for you, or you have to put the whole name in?
It doesn't do the whole thing, but you often don't have to put the whole title in either. You can put, you know, particularly if there's a main title and a subtitle, the main title is usually good enough. And as I said, I tend to use the ISBN if the book has one, because that's going to make sure you get the exact, you know, because if you put the complete Sherlock Holmes in, you're going to get 27 different editions. But if I put the ISBN from the back of the book in, it's going to give me the edition I have in my hand. Okay. And so it's something, you know, it's particularly if you have a keyboard that has a number pad, putting in the ISBN is actually faster than the title.
Is it also, after you get it all in, is there a capability of printing out a list of the books that you actually invented? Okay.
Yes. And I have done that, not for my whole thing, because, you know, 2,500 books would be just too many. But I will do it like for a sub list. You know, I've done it for the mysteries and such as a way of working through what I've put in and what I haven't. But I just wanted to show you guys that these existed. So let's see.
I want to thank you, because I've just started this process of all these books, and this is exciting because I was thought I had to make my own thing and do all the work, but this is much easier.
Yeah.
This is
so
great.
Melanie, did you have a question?
Oh, yes, please. When I buy old books, such as you mentioned, History of Norway, I often take a picture of the flyleaf. And is there a place you could put that picture on in this program?
Yes. I don't know if you can do it at Goodreads, but I know you can put your own picture in Library Thing.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Yeah. And let's choose one of these. Let me see if I can find one where people have done that. Well, yeah, no, on most things these days, if you think of, hey, it would be nice to have this application, there's a good chance somebody's already figured out how to do it. You know, obviously there are some things that aren't that way, but yeah, I was one of the first people. I signed up for Library Thing when there were like 1,000 people using it, and they're up over 2 million now. But it's very handy, because particularly, as I said, with the mysteries, because it has the phone app, if I'm standing at a used bookstore and can't remember whether I own this one, I can go in and find the author and look. And it's really handy with these series, you know, like the Donna Andrews, they're all bird puns. Like one of hers is called "We'll Always Have Parrots." instead of we'll always have Paris. And so, you know, you can imagine if I'm standing there going, have I read this one? So, and I can't tell you how often I've gotten caught when a book has been re-released with a new cover, because I've got a visual memory. And both romances and mysteries get reissued, and some science fiction with new covers.
All the
And
time.
so if the cover's different, I may not remember. That's where I get stuck. And so that's and for some reason, my internet is not working on getting library thing to come up. Well, no, library thing is down. It's not me. I'm getting but yeah, you can add your own picture of the cover of the flyleaf. So, any other questions? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.